Well, welcome everyone. Benvenuti a tutti e a tutti. Buenos dias a todos. And thank you so much for coming to talk about what happens when we integrate a therapy dog into second graders' sight word practice. So please stop for questions anytime. Education really is going to the therapy dog, so we couldn't be happier about this trend. And we're about to explain why. So for our index, we'll begin with our research question. And a few key definitions and introduce Bakuna, the therapy dog who participated in the experiment. Next, we'll discuss the methods, share our findings, acknowledge the limitations of our study, and make some recommendations for future research. Again, please stop us anytime for questions. Don't raise your hand, that won't be helpful, just ask. Okay, so the research question, I will read this in case anybody else has any issues seeing the screen. Can a therapy dog help to shift funds of identity and knowledge to increase second grade sight word acquisition scores on a standardized reading assessment? That was our research question. So now for some definitions. Sight words, you might be familiar with some of the Reading to Dogs programs, and that's great. This program is different though, because children shift their ideas about themselves as they share their cultural capital, exchanging stories and strategies as readers and learners. They work together to teach Bakuna about sight words, and we all learned a few lessons. So let's define sight words as the building blocks of reading. Much like addition and subtraction facts are the building blocks of math. So when a child recognizes and understands sight words, they read efficiently and can save their cognitive resources for deriving meaning from the text. Conversely, children who are learning their sight words read more slowly and invest more of their cognitive resources in decoding the words. So that's a process that impedes fluency and comprehension. Sight words are leveled by grade or age. Here we have some examples of sight word from the adults reading list for second graders. Here's the thing. Experts do not agree on whether children should memorize these words. And we're not in any way endorsing standardized tests at all. But the children who participated in our research were tested twice a year to determine their reading levels, and sight word recognition comprised a substantial part of those standardized tests. So substantial that children who did not pass these tests did not promote to the next grade. All right, so funds of identity. So in thinking about funds of identity, for example, race can be an imposed external marker of identity, whereas ethnicity is a marker of identity that an individual claims. So like a set of shared cultural constructs rather than an assumed set of characteristics that would incorrectly indicate a monolith of sorts, easily known, unchangeable, inviting prejudice and discrimination. So audience participation at the moment. Can anyone just shout out another example of identity? Okay, well, if you're still a little shy to participate, we could think of gender as an example. So children have their ways of identifying by their gender. The idea of the fund and the funds of identity, funds of knowledge, the fund part is that the construct is comprised of components that can shift. So following that notion, a fund can be changed, built or depleted like a bank account. And we wanted children to build their funds of identity, to think of themselves not only as students who must follow directions all day, but to elevate their sense of self, to incorporate the identity of being teachers. So teaching the therapy dog about their sight words. And let's see, now funds of knowledge. So experienced teachers often begin a lesson by activating learners' prior knowledge. They may ask questions that require children to recall the material recently covered in class, or to relate the present topic to an activity from the previous day. Sometimes teachers might ask children to explain a cultural concept, And this approach necessitates children accessing their funds of knowledge. It asks them to demonstrate their expertise, and as they share their knowledge, children are shifting their identities from learners to teachers. Now, we wanted children to tap and build their funds of knowledge, to think of themselves not only as teachers, but as smart, capable teachers who could share their valuable learning strategies with Bakuna as he joined their sight word practice sessions. So sharing such strategies can build understanding. As children learn about each other's ideas, they're increasing their own funds of knowledge. Awesome. References, if you like that. Okay, so please meet Bakuna Calvano Hlava, a 70-pound Labrador Golden Retriever who loved everyone. He had years of experience working with young children, but he had not met the participants until the experiment began. For the setting, we concentrate our reading resources in Title I schools and specialize in creating community and strengthening relationships in the classroom. Our experience centers on pre-emergent bilingual students, struggling readers, and children who have yet to discover the joys of school. So now back to that standardized test. For our procedures, just a little bit of background. The DRA is the Developmental Reading Assessment, the standardized test administered twice a year by each teacher in the school. Teachers administer the test before the experiment began and then again at the conclusion of our time with the students. Once a week, children met in small teacher-selected groups, 4 to 6 students, and practiced sight words for 15 minutes with or without Bakuna. Students in the experimental group practiced their flashcards with Bakuna as he sat on the floor in a corner of the classroom, and I just flipped the cards, just as the teacher and assistant flipped the cards for the children in the next room, in the control room. So all other literacy activities were identical, and Bakuna's presence was the variable. So for Bakuna's lessons, practicing language and sharing ideas, all for Bakuna's benefit, not because children were trying to escape the imposed external identity of English language learner. Again, tapping children's funds of knowledge, I asked the young students how they might teach Bakuna about their sight words, but I did not put any restrictions on their ideas, nor did I evaluate the likelihood of succeeding with any particular strategy. I really just said, hey, how are we going to do this? How are you going to do this? So the students discussed their ideas for teaching Bakuna. And here's the thing. Interesting. They did not focus on testing his understanding. Ever. Not once. Even though they mentioned the big reading test that they took before we met, they remained unconcerned with testing Bakuna. Rather, they focused on teaching. So how does it work? It takes a lot of reading to teach someone else about reading. So students practice these skills with Bakuna. The word list did not include any nouns or verbs. This information is important because it meant that children could not show Bakuna an example. Instead, they had to explain the word. And in doing so, they had to shift their identities from students to teachers. So students strategized how to teach Bakuna without any guidance or any interference from adults. And Bakuna saw the same flashcards as his friends were using. If anyone did not know a word, we just put that word back in the stack of flashcards. Again, just as the teacher assistant in the control group would have done. They don't explain the words, they don't go into anything. If you miss a word, sorry, they just put it back in. There are issues with that all over the place, but that's the way it was. So that's what we did too. Just to keep the experiment, the conditions as tightly controlled as we could. Okay, so let's see. So Here we have some, so students as teachers, okay, good. Here we have some student teaching examples using a word selected from the sight word. Children cannot point to best as a noun. Similarly, they could not demonstrate best as a verb. Instead, they had to explain it. They had to teach it. So here are some examples of things that the children said, some quotes from them. Like best mean the highest score, like 100% on the test. Again, referencing the standardized test. And you're the best dog, Bakuna. So why does it work? Well, each meeting allowed students to test their strategies and modify them according to their own interpretation. So an example of the strategy, show Bakuna a flashcard and spell the word, or elaborate on the meaning, or use the word in context. So according to my participant observer notes, children gauge the success of their teaching by interpreting Bakuna's engagement with their lessons. Just like a teacher would check for student engagement with human students. So that's what these students did with Bakuna. So for instance, if Bakuna sat up looking at the flashcard, then a student might remark that Bakuna was learning because he was paying attention. So that particular approach was categorized as working. The students thought that was working. If Bakuna wagged his tail or cocked his head in response to the other teacher's explanations, then those movements signaled that Bakuna understood the lesson. Interestingly, the reverse notions also held true. For instance, if Bakuna fell asleep, then his teachers remarked that he must be tired after so much concentrating. And they likened his lack of focus to their own experiences on days when they skipped breakfast. Remember, this is a school in a low-income neighborhood, so these things happen a lot. Or didn't get enough sleep the previous night and had a hard time concentrating in school. Sometimes these evaluations cause students to change their strategies. One example happened when a student noted that Bakuna's sleepiness and said that we should whisper so that Bakuna might dream about the words, and then you could know it next time. This example demonstrates how that student used her knowledge of her friend's behavior to meet him where he was, a phrase that adult teachers often use when describing effective methods of reaching their students. An example that helps illustrate both funds of knowledge and identity, because this child was both a student and a teacher in the scenario. So, thank you. Okay, so here are the results. Go through them very fast. As you would hope and expect, all children improved, but what you might not be able to see on this graph is that the treatment group improved by an unprecedented 78% versus the 37% in the control group. So here's the summary. Children became teachers, Bakuna became the student, the teachers engaged Bakuna. And quickly, just to the limitations. So we have this qualitative design, and we might have missed important, we had a quantitative design, and we might have missed important qualitative information. So we can fix that with a multi-methods approach, maybe including interviews and manipulation checks. Those are relatively small sample size, so we would need more students to increase the generalizability. We only used one marker of identity, which was reading in the dominant language. So we could fix that by including many more markers of identity and including students with literacy-related disabilities such as dyslexia or behavioral challenges and more pre-emergent bilingual children. Similarly, all data came from one site, so we would need different types of schools, private, religious, military, charter, that kind of thing. And those are the future directions as well. So skip a few pages because you've heard them all. are some references. Let's see, future directions, okay, good. Representative publications, there's a few of those. And our team, this work could not happen without a team, so thank you to our team. And here they are with some contact information, just in case anyone wants to take that picture. And then we have to say thank you to so many people, but especially to the Calvano family who raised Kakuna, the principal and the teachers who shared their time with us. My notes say, Dr. Valeria Gargiani, I messed the names up, I'm sorry, I know I will. And Leonardo Paterna for all their work in organizing the conference, and particularly for organizing my team to come to. Utkarsh Baigut and Padu Muthuswamy. And okay, finally, the Social Justice Inquiry Unit in the Arizona State University School of Social Transformation. Thank you. Grazie a mille. Y un millón de gracias. Questions, domande o preguntas.